free-for-all. You're on your own, soldier.
All right, yo, what's going on, everybody? We got another good one for you this week. A lot of stuff happened this week. We had the end of the Trump era, uh, inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and uh, what we're beginning to see of a alt tech revolution. Uh, and so that's what we wanted to talk about this week.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on. It seems like all these corporations and the government are changing their position all at once, and everything's going, preferring the liberal agenda and censorship and takedown of, right wing people. And I was hearing they even wanted to vet a lot of the National Guardsmen that are being sent to the Capitol. They wanted to vet their political views.
Yeah, and so we're talking about all this all this crazy stuff that's going on and everything, and um what kind of started all of this in the last 2 weeks, was the Capitol riot and everything, and then the following censorship and ban from uh Twitter or whatever in the form of Donald Trump. uh they banned him from the platform and everything, and then they started essentially what we're seeing is a political purge of anybody that subscribes to an ideology that's different from what the left believes. And so we're seeing, we saw Donald Trump get banned, and then we're seeing people, lots of his followers are being purged from Twitter. Um, you know, uh, People that subscribe to conservative ideology and even libertarians are all being purged from the social media platforms, and they've tried to uh, find alternatives. And I think that's what we're starting to see is what's becoming of this alt tech revolution. And an alt tech revolution, we're talking about different social media platforms that are an alternative to the ones that we already have, or different availability in general. And we have websites like Parlor, Gab. Eric July from Backwards was talking about a new streaming platform called Odyssey that he wants to use. Um, and, we're seeing all these different alternatives that are starting to pop up. And people are starting to leave big social media platforms like Twitter. Streamers are starting to, want to migrate off of Twitch and off of YouTube because they're being banned and censored on there anyway.
Just for example, if you're trying to figure out stuff nowadays, um, people are almost always searching for things through Google. And obviously, Google is a company that has been censoring stuff. Like they put warnings on YouTube videos and links to articles or whatever to teach you their agenda. So a way to circumvent that is to use DuckDuckGo, and you can find a lot more information and uh, look up things that aren't even on Google.
And I think what a lot of people are starting to recognize is that the censorship, as far as banning people and censoring tweets, or censoring the posts on any form of social media now, even by Facebook and Instagram, it's deeper than Donald Trump. It's not it's not something that the left wants you to believe, where they're talking about, oh no, it was exclusively Donald Trump. It wasn't supposed to be anybody else. Um, Although a lot of different prominent people like AOC and stuff like that they're asking for Trump's followers to be purged from social media and all these different platforms as well. Um, so it's very much so deeper than the lie that the left is feeding us, that it was only because of Donald Trump. It's definitely deeper than him. It's more about silencing the opposition and silencing anybody that doesn't agree with you.
Yeah, it's like they wanted this all along. They wanted to almost bait everybody into the same pool of people, or like be a Donald Trump follower, or Republican, like or like supporter, or part of any of these Republican college groups. I'm hearing like that are going to be put on like watch lists or something. FBI, I was hearing. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but things like Turning Point USA, which I don't really agree with, but they have a lot of conservative and libertarian young kids in their group, and they could be put on watch lists or like be classified as a hate group. Like that's pretty insane. And like I said, Trump's a big magnet of like support. Like a lot of different people like him, and obviously all these conservative groups have gone crazy over him in the past couple of years. So, like I said, it just seems like they wanted to use this as an opportunity to group everybody together and ban or deny services to people who are conservative or libertarian or don't really like the centrist leftist view.
And so yeah, the people on the right and conservatives, libertarians, centrists, that point of view is being purged by the left uh, in a very organized manner. And I guess one of the ironies of all of this is that the left worked so hard to get Donald Trump banned from all these different social media platforms, as Facebook, as Twitter, and all this other stuff. Um, they worked so hard to get him banned from all of these, but now that he's gone, everybody's complaining that politics is so dull and boring. Now that he's gone, they have nobody to make fun of. They have nobody to make memes of, and nobody's tweets to roast, and all this other stuff. So like, people are basically saying that politics is stupid now because he's gone. And so you look at the fact that they're even saying that, and it just proves that he stirred the pot. I wouldn't necessarily say in a good way, but he definitely stirred the pot, and he definitely mixed up politics or whatever as we knew it for the last 4 years.
Yeah, and in politics, I think politics should be interesting because, if somebody attracts attention to it, then that's a good thing. It makes people pay attention to what's actually going on because a lot of it's not reported on by the media and it's swept under the rug, and politicians, take votes at times where not everybody's at the Capitol and stuff like that. They do shady stuff. So, I mean, the more interesting you can make politics, especially state and local, and I mean Washington as well. But just more people need to pay attention because I feel like they almost want to make it boring because that gets people to not pay attention.
And so yeah, we're talking about how Trump mixed up politics and all this other stuff. Well, he's gone now. That era is over. And so when we think of the end of the Trump era, the one thing that I keep thinking about is how he even got into his position in the first place. Back when he ran in 2016, he was running against Hillary Clinton, and the left, consistently brought up the fact that it wasn't even a contest. Hillary was going to win by a landslide and everything, and then it was like Trump ends up winning. And so his presidency already started off with he wasn't supposed to be there in the first place, or at least that's what everybody thought. And what I think a lot of people need to realize is that Trump won in 2016 not because he was a politician or anything like that. He won because he wasn't. And what I mean by that is that Americans voted for Trump out of a distaste for the system and the state that we currently live in, where our lives are controlled by mainstream politicians. And Trump seemed to, in 2016 when he campaigned, he seemed very, very edgy. He seemed like he went against the grain from a lot of different perspectives. He talked about ridding Washington, D.C. of its corruption, draining the swamp, um, and he wanted America. Trump's America was to be reverted back to the way it was in the old days, or whatever. Make America great again was his slogan, and that was why he won. It's because a lot of he got a lot of people that had been beat up on. The military that was starting to be brought back to the U.S. and everything from the Middle East. Americans that had just come out of a recession and everything. So his talk about all of this change and helping make America great again or whatever was very eerily similar to the same kind of message that Obama gave uh, when he won in 2008, and then again in 2012 was this message of change and everything. And I think that's very important to reflect on and figure out how Trump even got that position in the first place.
Yeah, the whole "Make America Great Again" thing. I think mostly it just kind of has the connotation of like the American dream, and people just want to live better than their parents. And in this time that with the economy and everything, and the recession before, so the Great Recession, people were worried about their future and whether Social Security will be there and stuff. And I think what really put Trump over the edge was, you know, talking about like bringing manufacturing jobs back. You can argue whether or not manufacturing jobs are really a good thing for the U.S. to be having, but we've really changed to a service sector economy, and unfortunately, Trump didn't even fulfill that promise at all. Like we're actually more of a service sector economy than we were when he started. Anyway, the Trump was really arguing for the manufacturing jobs, and that's what got him the Midwest, and that's really what got him the presidency. I voted for Trump. I didn't really like him that much, but I liked him the most. The best thing is that he pisses off all the people that I hate. I mean, he pisses off all the liberals. He pisses off just anybody who is PC, basically. And PC is so annoying, and it's literally the topic of so much discussion, and especially like with the Twitter and everything going on now. But I mean, railing against PC is probably one of the biggest things in 21st century politics and 21st century life. I mean, it's hard to even have a job without being politically correct, and while it's well intended, it's not good in the long run. It's just going to end up being whatever people approve. They're going to end up not hearing your opinion because they don't want to, it upsets them or whatever.
Yo, and so you talked about Trump like trying to bring jobs back and everything. So I told you how my apartment's been under construction for the last several months and everything. Well, uh, a couple months back, they took our window out because they were going to replace it and do all this other stuff. And I woke up one morning and everything because I was working from home. Um, I worked from home even before the pandemic, but um, I woke up and there were these two construction workers outside the window, and they were both talking to each other. Obviously, I have no windows, so there's only plastic separating us, and so I'm basically hearing their entire conversation. I don't know if they knew anybody was in the room that they were working outside of or what, but um, they're talking to each other, and the one of the guys says to the other, and he was like, "Hey," it's like you know this election is going to happen in the next couple weeks, like what do you think's going to happen and everything. And the other guy, he took a minute or whatever, and he was just like, well, you know, I don't really pay attention to politics all that much. He was like, I kind of just wake up, go to work and everything, and come home and then do the same thing again the next day. He was like, I don't pay attention to it that much. But he was like, the one thing that I can tell you is that Trump paid on his promise to bring jobs back to us and everything. He was like, if it wasn't for him, these companies that we're working for and companies that were helping, complete projects, he was like, these companies wouldn't exist, or these companies wouldn't have the money to pay us to do these jobs and everything. He was like, the only reason that I'm even taking home a paycheck is because of how he's helped us and everything. And I think that definitely, you know, um, from somebody coming from somebody, it definitely felt like it was an honest conversation, and he was just being honest and everything. And I think that's like, important to realize is that he definitely made Americans believe uh in our country again. And I think that was important because I think a lot of people were starting to lose sight of that. But as good as that is, Trump's overall presidency in and of itself, I think, was a complete, I don't want to say a complete failure, but Trump wasn't who we thought he was. And whether or not that's 100% his fault, I don't know. But Trump's presidency failed because the system has always been rigged. And I don't mean to say that like that's why he lost the election or anything like that. I'm not trying to dispute election results or where he's at now. What I'm trying to talk about is the fact that he failed because the system is rigged, and that's what his supporters are starting to realize. Because the whole reason he couldn't pass effective policy like he wanted to was because the other side of the aisle that he needs to cooperate with in order to pass the policy that he wants to pass wants to paint his side as racists, homophobes, bigots, and whatever other friggin' name they can think of to call them and everything. They want to basically demonize the other side and then blame them when they don't get anything done. And so that's what Trump dealt with for the entire 4 years that he was president. Was the election results were immediately disputed. They spent almost the entirety of his presidency trying to get him impeached for supposedly colluding with Russia to interfere with the election and everything. That got disproven, unfortunately, only a year ago. So he dealt with that for almost the entirety of his presidency, being told that he wasn't even supposed to be there in the first place because he rigged the election. And when that happens, you can't get anything done because people don't even want to listen to you in the first place. They don't even think you're supposed to be there. And so it was impossible for him to pass policy. And so, he essentially used executive orders for the most part to pass anything. There were certain bills that ended up getting passed or whatever bipartisanly in the Senate and everything, but those bills were few and far between.
Yeah, even in his first 2 years when Republicans had all branches of the government, Trump didn't really succeed because there were these renegade Republicans like John McCain and Romney who were all in on this Russian investigation hoax. And it wasted like 3 to 4 years. And when Trump got into office, or, before, I don't know, like after he gets elected or whenever he appointed his cabinet, it's all these RNC approved people, like generals and uh, directors of whatever.
Yeah, like he had he
Swamp
had John
creatures.
Bolton in there, right? Wasn't John Bolton a part of his administration to some extent?
Yeah. Yeah, John Bolton, Rex Tillerson, just like all these people that are like super shady. And as soon as he appointed them, almost all of them, they just defy his orders at every turn. And we didn't vote for these people. So why are they able to just defy the person that we voted for?
And aside from this whole message that he gave of making America great again, I think a lot of the more far right conservatives, they they upheld him as the champion of the Second Amendment. And I think this is another one of his massive failures as a president, especially who campaigned as Republican. That I think even Republicans need to realize this. They can't keep going on with this notion that he was a pro 2A president because that's almost the opposite of what he was. When this whole attack happened in Las Vegas, I want to say that was in 2016, the year that he became president. And the left essentially, obviously, anytime there's a mass shooting, the left wants to politicize it and make it about gun control. Oh, we need to ban high capacity magazines. We need to ban automatic weapons that have already been banned. It's like they don't even understand the laws that we already have, but they want to make more of them for some stupid friggin' reason. Trump obviously he doesn't want to look like the bad guy after all this bad press that he's been given. So he basically comes back and he says, "Okay, we're going to ban bump stocks." And if you don't know what a bump stock is, it's essentially a stock that you put on the end of a gun, and when the gun fires, it it turns the recoil into a way to fire the gun faster, basically. So Trump comes out and says, "Okay, we're going to ban bump stocks." He was like, automatic weapons are already banned. People can't even have those. So he was like, "There's nothing for me to do in that department." But he was like, if these people are taking semi-automatic firearms that are legal and then using bump stocks to make them fire like an automatic firearm, okay, yeah, we'll get rid of them. And the problem was that that's what he told everybody the law was. If you actually read the law sets a very, very, very bad precedent. The law sets a precedent that is essentially any gun that permits an attachment. So obviously, I just stated a bump stock is an attachment, but it does not specify that. It doesn't specify just bump stocks. It leaves it completely open for determination, and that allows any gun that permits attachments like a bump stock can be banned under the guise of an assault weapon. That means even something as stupid as a pistol that has the capacity to carry a laser underneath the barrel, that can be deemed as an assault weapon and can be banned entirely, which that's the complete opposite of what 2A is. We should be able to own anything that we want. And the fact that he signed this law or whatever and wanted to come off still as pro 2A is completely absurd, because that's the exact opposite of what it did.
Yeah, Trump claimed that he wanted to be the most Second Amendment friendly president or something like that. Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, people don't understand the point of the Second Amendment. They think it's for self-defense or it's for hunting or whatever, but you gotta understand around the time of the writing of the Bill of Rights, they had just fought a revolution against a tyrannical government. So the whole point is to, and a lot of people had even moved to the continent to uh, escape tyrannical governments before that, and then the British colonized everything, or the French or the Spanish. But the whole point is to fight against the tyrannical government, to have the same weapons that is accessible to them. I mean, it sounds radical, but it's just how things were back then, and it's the unfortunate reality of how things are right now. I mean, the government and even SWAT teams have access to all this crazy stuff, and it's like all militarized, and then they want to come in and keep regulating more and more what you can own while they're getting the latest tech. It's pretty crazy. Like all this riot gear and stuff, and you see with all these police and all these protests. I mean, obviously, some of them need to be protecting private property, but they're not even doing that. So they're getting militarized and they're just protecting themselves. And what did Trump do with the Second Amendment? He just basically, like you said, just made this declaration, this open door. ATF can do whatever they want with it, basically, and go ahead and regulate anything else based upon this.
Yeah, the ATF needs to go. They need to be banned. I don't like them. But we're talking about how he failed as a Second Amendment president, but it's not his only failure either. He failed in just about every other area that he promised to come through on when he campaigned. He didn't finish this border wall. He said even if I only make it for 4 years or whatever, he said that the wall was going to be finished before the end of his first term. And you know, uh, that didn't happen. In fact, Biden actually just repealed that. So border wall construction has completely ceased at this moment.
Lock her up didn't happen. Hillary Clinton's still free.
Yep, Hillary's still free. The Keystone Pipeline project still wasn't finished. Biden made quick work of that as well. He just revoked the permit for that project, so you can say sayonara to 40,000 union jobs. That's an incredible first day as president, eliminating 40,000 jobs. Trump still couldn't repeal Obamacare. In fact, and see, this is another thing. The conservatives champion this idea. We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. it went from just repealing it to, okay, now we're going to replace it. Like, isn't that the entire reason you were repealing it in the first place? Is because the government shouldn't be mandating healthcare?
Yeah,
They completely lost the idea behind the movement that they were broadcasting and everything. So, repealing Obamacare, and see, they didn't even repeal Obamacare. They couldn't even replace it with anything because they couldn't repeal it. And then Trump's deficit spending was just absolutely stupid.
yeah.
The
When the
amount of money
economy is
that he put
supposed to
on.
be the greatest economy ever, and he's saying it's the greatest ever, but he's demanding low interest rates from the Fed, which he doesn't really control, but the Fed still bowed down and basically lowered interest rates all the way to 0%. And like you said, the deficit spending out of control. And Trump put up as much debt in his first term. I don't know if I've said this before on the podcast. His first term in 4 years, as much as Obama did in 8. Like, that's absolutely insane. And like I said, he was saying that was the best economy ever. I mean, even according to the mainstream economic theory, which is completely wrong, the Keynesian economic theory that they teach in school, when the economy's supposedly good, you're supposed to be saving money. You're supposed to have higher interest rates. You're supposed to have less government spending or higher taxes or whatever. You're not supposed to be running deficit spending all the time. That's just the new normal. It's racking up debt because people just want cheap money and they want, more jobs or whatever. That's what sells when you're in politics.
Yeah, and another one of his failures, he did promise that he wasn't going to get us into any more wars, and I definitely think he followed through on that one. But he didn't exactly succeed in bringing the troops home like he also promised to do. He didn't bring any of them home, but what he did was he rather reallocated them to other areas of the Middle East. And so obviously, when he took office in 2016, we were still dealing with this whole ISIS problem. They were attacking us constantly, and we couldn't figure out what we were going to do with them. So what we ended up doing was just reallocating forces that were elsewhere to fight ISIS and everything. And eventually, it took a year or two, but we ended up basically destroying them. And that was something actually that really pissed off the left or whatever. That we killed Soleimani. I'm gonna butcher his name. Soleimani. Uh,
Soleimani.
yeah, or whatever, that he was going to get us into another war, but don't realize the value of that target in terms of what he's done to other people. So I'd say those promises were half fulfilled. He didn't necessarily bring anybody home, but he didn't send any more people there. At least that we know of, just reallocated people elsewhere. So that's not an entire failure, but at the same time, it's still not following through on the promise.
Yeah, all the QAnon crowd was waiting for Trump to do all these great things. They kept saying, "Oh, 4D chess, like Trump's just wait, like Trump's gonna come out with this amazing thing, and he's gonna restore everything and lock all the pedophiles up and make America great again overnight, basically." And they were saying, "Oh, Trump's gonna win the election or whatever," but nothing ever happened. I mean, it's always like a nothing burger. I feel like the QAnon movement's almost like a psyop to just bait conservatives and make them believe in a certain thing, just make them docile, just be like, oh, just like I said, just wait, trust the plan. Trust the plan's a huge one. Oh yeah, and like one of their mottos is like where we go as one or like something like that. And that's just it's something of that nature, and it's just such a communist motto almost. It's so ironic, and it just demonstrates the fact that these people aren't really thinking for themselves. They're just believing in something that like one person types, like, oh, like this person's terrible, and Trump's gonna do this and that and the other, and like I said, nothing ever came of it. And like it's baiting these conservatives that would otherwise be voting for, like you said, somebody who doesn't spend a bunch of money in government and doesn't attack the Second Amendment. They're making them believe in a president that was pretty much a liberal a few years prior to even, getting into politics. And he donated big to Democrats and stuff. And even if you even if he says he's conservative or whatever, I mean, he's still a New Yorker.
No, you're talking about the fact that he would have been considered liberal a couple years ago, and they even came out with a voice recording that said, "If I ever run for president, I'm going to run as a Republican because those people are stupid." And what did he run as? He ran as a Republican, so he definitely came through on that and everything. But Trump's gone now, and so Biden got inaugurated a couple days ago, and he made absolutely no shortage of time in displaying blatant ignorance and hypocrisy. Just even during his inauguration, where people weren't social distancing or wearing masks and everything, they're hugging each other almost as if everything that they've preached to us for the last year essentially was complete bullshit. And they're doing the complete opposite of what they've been telling us to do for the last year. They even so they held a press conference or whatever after the inauguration, and somebody actually even brought up that question to Biden's press secretary, Jen Psaki, I think is her name. She was quoted saying that there was a lack of social distancing and use of masks later on after the inauguration or whatever at the Lincoln Memorial because they had more important things to worry about. So social distancing and masks just went right out the friggin' window because they have more important things to worry about. Meanwhile, millions of Americans have lost their jobs, their homes, businesses, and everything because of the policy that they advocated, and then they turn around and throw the policy that they advocated right in the trash right in front of everybody for the world to see. And I think that's pretty shitty. And it's very hypocritical of them to do, being the ones that championed all of this absolutely destructive policy like lockdowns and everything that have cost Americans a lot.
Yeah, they can't even save face on national television. I mean, it's one thing for some of these people to get caught, like, not in public, but like someone like Fauci to get caught at a Washington Nationals game, just like not masked up while he's telling everybody else to be doing that. That's pretty ridiculous. These people have no credibility.
Yeah, and so we're talking about hypocrisy and everything. One of the things that Joe Biden campaigned on was the fact that he cared about the military and that he was always going to protect America first. There was a commercial that it would always air when I would watch TV at night or whatever. One of his campaign ads, and at the end of it, it was a quote of Joe Biden saying, "I'll protect America first without exception every single time." And the first day he's in office, they tell the military that was on standby for the inauguration, all the photos that you saw of all these National Guardsmen outside of the gate or whatever, where the inauguration was being held. He basically told those military that we have absolutely no use for you guys anymore. You guys can go and sit in the corner of this parking garage and rot. Basically, one outlet for electricity and one bathroom for however many thousand troops that they put in this parking garage. Not only that, but they begin purging different military members who basically were either indifferent or were not in support of Joe Biden's inauguration. They said, "You don't like Joe Biden? Okay, you're gone. Peace." And the other hypocritical element of it is the fact that they had his entire inauguration fenced in as if walls now work. They talked about that for 4 friggin' years while Trump was shouting "Build the wall." They were saying, "Oh, walls don't work," and now Joe Biden's inauguration is surrounded by one, and nobody says a thing.
Yeah, the whole and the word he keeps spouting off is unity. It's like everything's unity, unity, unity. I'm gonna be a president for every American. These are the things he says, but obviously it's not true, and obviously a good portion of the 75 million that voted for Trump don't think that he's a legitimate president, and it's just pretty hypocritical. And it's funny because there was a meme with a photo of the Trump inauguration, and it was saying, "Oh, this is when a dictator took over." And then there was one that shows the Biden inauguration with all the National Guard and all the fences and everything, and extra Capitol Police, and it says democracy. And it's so ironic because this is what the mainstream media portrays it as. Peaceful transition, like, oh, back to normal, Biden's gonna fix everything. Trump's Hitler or whatever. But Trump's the one that won by votes, and Biden's the one that a lot of people think cheated or whatever.
And Biden's talking about how he wants to put America first and all this other stuff, and that unity and healing is what he's been preaching and everything. And he made absolutely quick work of making the U.S. dependent on a bunch of different foreign powers again. And what I'm trying to say by that is that he's essentially undoing all of the things that Trump was successful at doing during his presidency, either by executive orders or passing bills. He's issuing all these different executive orders. He's issued a crap load of them at this point, but some of the ones that he's issued so far. So we're talking about rejoining the Paris Climate Accords that essentially put us at the mercy of all these other different foreign powers when it comes to emissions control and all these other different variables. So he did that. He cancels the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline, which now makes us dependent on foreign oil again. On top of making us dependent on foreign oil, he now announces that we're going to go send more troops to Syria or something like
Yeah.
that. You're an absolute idiot if you don't understand the fact by now that we're going back to the Middle East because of foreign oil. We're
Yeah.
not going back there to fight terrorists.
Yeah, and also with Joe Biden being against fracking, alongside the Keystone Pipeline, it's going to really, like you said, make us dependent on foreign oil. And alongside, like with the troops going back into Syria and probably declining relationships with certain other countries, the price of oil is just going to go through the roof. I mean, the price of oil under Trump, I mean, just here in Florida, I mean, we don't have the cheapest gasoline. I'm not an expert on, the price of oil per barrel, but our gasoline was getting below $2. And I'm preparing to go like above where we went in the Obama years, like above that $4 range. And this is probably going to be wild. So invest in oil.
Yeah, and see that's another hypocrisy in and of itself because and if we're going back to Syria, that's another that's an immediate failure on a campaign promise that he gave us of bringing the troops home and all this other stuff. No more foreign wars and everything, but now we're going to send more troops to Syria. Yeah, okay. You know, that's a hypocrisy in and of itself. It's the exact opposite of what he campaigned on. Um I saw a story so I guess Trump had a button on the desk in the Oval Office that he could press, and a White House butler would immediately enter the Oval Office with a Diet Coke. Um, and I guess Biden doesn't like Diet Coke or something like that, but he got rid of Trump's Diet Coke button, so that's not there anymore.
But Trump said, I've never seen a skinny person drinking Diet Coke.
Trump's also fat, so
Yeah, Trump's not a skinny person. That's a classic Trump tweet. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
So aside from that one, that I got a kick out of that one. I thought that one was pretty funny. But he reinstated ties to the World Health Organization. If you've read anything about them, they're the ones that lied about the immediate COVID numbers that Trump got right before the first lockdown started to happen. They lied about the case numbers and about the severity of the virus that we were dealing with.
Yeah, yeah. And something crazy about the WHO that came out from the WHO this week is that, like you said, Biden administration is going to be wanting to go along with them, and they're going to be saying that they're only going to confirm something as a COVID case if you have a positive test and you see a doctor. It might even be two positive tests, and you see a doctor and the doctor deems you worthy of, or like deems you, as a COVID patient, basically. So this is just going to drastically lower the numbers. And I don't know if I said this on a previous podcast, but the PCR testing and a lot of the testing we've been using is just giving false positives. So, I mean, prepare for when the Biden administration assumes these WHO rules, prepare for everybody that's going to say, oh my God, the numbers are all of a sudden going down. Well, I mean, you're kind of you're moving the goalposts here. So it's not even fair. Sorry, go ahead. What are some of the other executive orders?
Yeah. So another one of the ones that I guess was top of the list was furthering protection for DACA, which I don't know if you guys paid attention to when that first became a thing back in what was it 2017, 2018. Which basically what DACA did was issue protections for kids that were brought to America by illegal immigrant parents, so that the children wouldn't be deported. Their parents got no such protection, but the kids would be allowed to remain in the United States, which I don't necessarily think is an inherently bad thing. I definitely don't think that kids should be punished for a crime that their parents either knew that they committed or maybe didn't quite understand that they were committing. You know, that's not an inherently bad thing. However, if kids want to stay here or whatever, because obviously, when this became a thing, you're talking about immigrant children or whatever that were born in the U.S., a decade or two ago. So they're, of legal age at this point to apply for citizenship and everything. It's not an inherently bad thing if these kids want to do everything right, but if they completely choose to blow off the system, then that's an entirely different problem. And so obviously it doesn't address that issue. And we're talking about illegal immigrants. Another executive order that he issued halted the border wall construction. So uh, Trump's "Build the Wall" campaign promise, that's no more. The wall wasn't finished, and Biden just halted construction of it. So our borders are obviously still open for illegal immigrants to come over and cross whenever they want to. Speaking of illegal immigrants crossing, have been a number of murders, kidnappings, rapes, and other violent crimes committed by members of MS-13 who are known to come by way of border crossing into the United States. They do not come here legally. They never even try to. That's what they use to get into the U.S. And because they are undocumented, it is next to impossible to prosecute them in a U.S. court of law.
See, the thing about like the border wall and that not being finished and uh, DACA being furthered, this is one of the main things that kind of resonated with a lot of Trump's base is not having DACA and building the wall because, um, although these people, it's not their fault or whatever if they come here, a lot of like a lot of people are concerned about the money we spend bringing these people in, or welfare, or they're not paying taxes if they're not making money or they're not on the books or whatever, and they're just benefiting off the roads and public health and all this other stuff, especially in places like California.
Yeah, and so I guess the last executive order, going back to our original talking point of all these different executive orders that Biden has issued so far, the last executive order that I thought was worthy of noting was that he issued an executive order that essentially directed all federal employees to make an oath to restore and maintain faith in the federal government. And that's where I want people to stop telling me that it isn't a friggin' cult, because it is. Worshipping the federal government and making them your only god is it's definitely cult worthy. So stop telling me that it's not a cult. And so
Yeah.
I guess it definitely brings us to our next question. Is Biden just doing all of this so that he comes off as a good president that's done something, and or is he a stepping stone for Kamala Harris to take office? There's definitely a lot of people have this theory that Kamala Harris was always meant to be the president, and that something's going to happen within the next several months, or maybe even a year or so from now, that's going to allow Kamala Harris to take office. Whether it's Biden being medically unfit for office, he definitely presents signs of dementia and possibly even Alzheimer's, just given the fact that he can't form coherent sentences and he mumbles and all this other stuff. Those could definitely be signs of age and everything. So, is age what takes him out of office, or does he do something that's beyond forgiving, and do they impeach him and then allow Kamala Harris to take his place? What happens? Basically, is he a stepping stone for Kamala to take office, or do you think that Biden's there to stay?
I don't think Biden's going to last more than 6 months. And especially now with all this coronavirus going on and all these misclassifications when it comes to medical treatment and, death certificates and stuff. It could even be coronavirus that kills Biden. Not really funny, but Kamala would be the perfect person to bring about the liberal agenda. I mean, she's a hypocrite, she's a liar, former cop, would prosecute people all the time for drug charges and stuff, and now she's saying that, oh, in the vice presidential debate, she was saying, oh, me and Joe want to decriminalize marijuana on a federal level. It's like, do you really, or are you changing your position? Is your position just what the party tells you to do?
Yeah, because
Are we
she's the one
are
that
people
quite
voting for
literally
you?
prosecuted who she viewed as drug criminals or whatever. She's the one that prosecuted them under Bill Clinton's crime bill, right?
Yeah.
When she was AG in California.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's another hypocrisy in and of itself. She's the attorney general. She's the one where cops bring criminals to her to be prosecuted in court and everything. And so you're talking about like literally the lead cop or whatever that the left's championed after also championing the movement that says all cops are bastards and defund the police and all this other stuff. So that's a literal hypocrisy in and of itself. Electing a cop VP after campaigning on anti police the entire year.
Yeah, it all seems kind of fishy, especially because Kamala Harris was really going after Biden on the campaign trail, and then some of the presidential debates, or I'm sorry, the primary debates. Yeah, so Kamala Harris was really going after Biden in the primary debates. I don't know how somebody like that would want to stab Biden in the back almost, or I mean, obviously she's completely fake and she's a tool. I mean, that's true, but she'll probably make her grab for power. And she's definitely checks all the intersectionality boxes of black woman, and she's like, oh, I was disadvantaged and whatever.
Yeah, and so just with this administration, just in general, how long do you think it's going to take for uh, the Biden administration to start blaming the Trump administration for their own failures, even though Trump's obviously gone? Because that obviously, if that happens, that kind of remains consistent with the whole with the Obama administration, with their attitude of blaming Bush consistently for their own failures as an administration. Because the Democrats have obviously extended this impeachment trial well into Biden's term, when in fact Trump is gone from office, so it doesn't even really matter anymore. He's gone either way. They're just doing it at this point either to embarrass him or to make an example out of him. Essentially, they got him banned from Twitter, and he's no longer in office. They have nobody to make fun of anymore. It's literally like beating a dead horse. So, do you think that we're going to start seeing more of that? Do you think he's going to start? Do you think he's going to continue to blame Trump?
Oh, there's no doubt, and obviously Biden's trying to usher in some terrible policies like the Paris Climate Accord, and even has flirted with the Green New Deal, which I don't want to get too far into it, but basically on a scale of what makes countries rich and what makes them grow is cheap energy and cheap access to raw materials, land, labor, and capital. Basically, the Green New Deal is going to set us so far back economically, not only with upfront costs, but with opportunity costs of what we could have been in the future. They're going to bring in some terrible policies, and no doubt there's going to be consequences. There's going to be economic downturn. There's going to be civil unrest, and they're going to blame Trump and they're going to blame his followers as if they weren't really for 4 years constantly badgering Trump's followers and saying that Trump's not legitimate and getting rowdy with Antifa and BLM.
I saw a story get posted last night or the day before of during Biden's inauguration or whatever, at simultaneously happening the inauguration in D.C., rioters in Portland or Antifa, it confirmed Antifa had the flag patches and everything, were vandalizing and destroying the DNC headquarters in Portland, and I thought that was pretty hilarious of the left's own goons going after one of their criminal cathedrals in Portland. I thought that was pretty funny. But we're nearing the end of the podcast, so very quickly, do you think Biden's administration is going to start sparking a shift into the idea of decentralization or seceding because we have a bloated central government, or do you think that we're going to suffer for 4 years under Biden and wait to see what happens?
It depends. I don't think people really, especially in this day and age, with all the standard of living we have and everything, I don't think people have the will in them to really fight for what's right. And obviously, the people at the Capitol were like they acted like they want a war, but they didn't really understand the implications of the door they were knocking on or the Capitol they were breaking into when they went there, because obviously they're placed on watch lists and you know gonna serve federal time. But I don't think people honestly have it in their will to fight. At least not yet. Things aren't that bad.
But I mean, we talked about the alt tech revolution at the beginning of the podcast, and I think that's definitely a an indicator as to where people's minds are at right now in terms of where we're going, what the direction that we're headed. People we're seeing a mass exodus from Twitter. Twitter stocks continue to plummet, unfortunately for them. But we need to let that platform run itself into the ground. They need to go. Yeah, they need to be gone. And they're taking care of themselves for us. Their stocks continue to plummet as they continue this ideological purge on their platform. So they can go for as far as I care. But I think that's definitely an indicator in terms of where people are where people's minds are at, or at least some of them. And I definitely think that that leaves open the idea of decentralization because that seems to be the only good alternative that we have to a civil war. Because it let's pretend that decentralization were to lead to a civil war, which would be exactly where we're headed right now. You're talking about the people that want to be left alone. So you're talking about your obviously majority red, are the ones that want to be left alone. They're the ones um, that ideologically believe there should be a smaller government, that less government oversight. They believe in more individualistic rights rather than the government providing everything for them. So you're talking about these red states that want to be left alone and want small government versus the blue states uh, that worship the federal government and want them to control every single aspect of their lives. Because those blue states are the ones that prevent you from owning any firearms and prevent you from owning any way to protect yourself. And then the red states are the states where you're allowed to protect yourself with deadly force, where you're allowed to own guns, and carry them on a daily basis and things like that.
You're allowed to take up a trade and earn an honest living and or own a business and be rewarded for it and not just work under somebody else. You can actually create things.
Yeah, but we're talking about the this whole if decentralization would lead to a civil war or not. And so what I was trying to explain is that the states that have the means to aggress upon other states are the states that want to be left alone and the states that are least likely to fight. And so you're talking about the people that want to force the opposite side to agree with them constantly and everything are the ones that have absolutely no means to aggress upon other states. And so I think that's definitely a point worth mentioning because I think that is what prevents civil war from breaking out. If we were to just peacefully divorce the federal government and say we don't want you anymore. And so that kind of if that were to happen, if decentralization were to occur and we don't have civil war, and it's a success and everything, how do we deal with the challenges moving forward from that? Are Do we keep a national currency? Is crypto a good alternative to begin using? Is the investing in stocks in the stock market a smart idea at this point, or are we going to begin to see a shift from people putting money into stocks versus putting them into physical assets such as gold, guns and ammo, cars, alcohol, anything we can think of that'll hold value over time.
Yeah, the stock markets and the securities markets are different than they've ever been. I mean, people have had such faith in this in the U.S. dollar and the strength of the U.S. economy, but with the the 0% interest rates and the money printing that the Federal Reserve's been doing, it's really messed up the marketplace and shifted where people put their capital and what makes people money, basically.
And so, do you think we're gonna end up splitting? If Do you think we would end up splitting the national debt among states if states were to govern themselves? Do you think we're gonna default? What do you think happens with that?
Well, the national debt, I mean, I don't, how the hell would they split it up? Would they split it up by population? Would they, like, how's it go? Do I have to pay the national debt that was accrued, during somebody else's generation when I wasn't even alive? It's really not plausible. The only real thing that the U.S. could do at this point, if it wanted to split up as a country, is to default on its debt and just create all new currencies, or maybe create another US dollar, but people definitely would not have faith in whatever currency that US issues unless it's backed by something like gold, or yeah, it would have to be backed by something at that point, because any sort of central banking policy is just going to devalue the currency and not make people want to invest here, basically. I mean, devalued currency would be good for our exports, but in terms of standard of living and investment, it's really going to screw our country.
And I think another criticism that a lot of people have of decentralization that I hear a lot is, it, and a lot of times it's the anti-war leftists that are asking the question, how do we protect ourselves if there's no national government to protect us? What do we do? I guess, is there an answer to that argument? Do we, if states are allowed to govern themselves, do they take up a mutual defense pact among states? Basically, meaning that if one state goes to war with a foreign power or something like that, say um, a attack happens in a certain state, and that state feels compelled enough to to send its national guard forces or something like that um, uh, to fight in Syria or something like that. Um, do other states come and help them, or is that something that like Texas itself is going to have to decide, um, or is it going to be a state only affair? Is there an answer to that argument that we won't be able to protect ourselves?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was definitely we're definitely in a completely different situation than we were at the founding of the country, especially when you consider that even before the Constitution, there was the Articles of Confederation, where it basically was like a loose pact between states. They were, the definition of states. They were actual countries almost, and they would have almost complete sovereignty and just trade freely. And uh, I don't really know what their national defense plan was, but I don't think it was too great because that only lasted a few years, and they were complaining about the strength of taxation and the federal government. But like if you're talking about like alliances are what get us into wars. So maybe it'd be good if the states just all had their own armies or whatever. And
And I guess the last thing that I would mention is that people need to realize that where we are currently heading with all of the censorship and purging people from social media platforms, firing them from jobs because of their political views, and literally, the literal definition of cancel culture, with canceling all these people that don't agree with you and things like that, it begs the question of why do we continue to have faith in the system, and why do we continue to want to share a government with people that either want us dead or want us purged from existence?
yeah,
Because it makes absolutely no sense to share government with these people, because they are ideologically different, and there's absolutely nothing we are going to do to change it because their positions are based purely in emotion and not in fact or evidence. And I think people need to start to understand that decentralization is the peaceful approach to the situation. It's the only We are currently headed towards civil war. Make no mistake about that. And so decentralization is the other option that is on the table, that theoretically would not result in any bloodshed because of the factors that I already discussed. And
yeah,
so um, I think decentralization is the only option that prevents a civil war.
yeah. Like I mean, I don't know other than like because you could say decentral like because obviously if the central government had less power, that'd be great. Like the federal government had less power, and they just let the states be what they were intended to be, like laboratories of democracy, and they could figure out whatever's best and do what test different policies out, and people could move with their feet, and the better states would thrive. But I don't really know because like we seem to have a pretty explicit constitution when it comes to these things, and even that hasn't prevented some of the worst things from happening, even 1 or 200 years from its inception.
I think the one thing that I want, this one's for conservatives. The one thing that I want conservatives to take away from all of this is that you need to stop believing in the system. You've always and see, this is why conservatives are always on the defense. They never play offense. They never do. Um, they're never able to do anything of substance because they're always playing defense to the left. And this is what I want you guys to understand, is that the game is rigged. That no matter who is in office, every single time a Republican runs every 4 years, it's always, we don't have the right people in office. I'm the one that you need to put in office to get things done. But it never changes. Nothing ever happens. It's always more of the same. Trump is even more proof of that, as we discussed earlier. That you need to rid yourself of this lie that you've been fed by your own conservative commentators, that getting the right people in office is going to change things. It simply has not worked up until this point, and you're getting absolutely nowhere fast. In fact, you're failing in almost every single aspect. We talked last week about where conservatives can start winning, and that's in the area of culture. Being a part of culture, being a part of all these areas that the left has on lock. In theater, like movies, cinema, music, and all these different areas that the left has all these influencers locked down and everything. That's where conservatives need to start fighting. But this whole idea of having faith in a system that was rigged against you in the first place is absolutely stupid, and people need to stop believing it.
Yeah, and definitely conservatives are starting to wake up, like we were talking about with cops. And yeah, it's just always kind of like a compromise because People say they're conservative, and whatever definition you really think that has, I mean, obviously, it kind of like harkens back to the whole idea of whatever was in the past or whatever. But these conservative politicians, these Republicans that claim to be conservative but are basically rhinos. Basically, all of them are Republican in name only. All they are is just like a 10 or 20-year lagging version of what the Democrats are. Like they're just what the Democrats were 10 or 20 years ago. And Michael Malice says that conservatism is progressivism driving the speed limit or something of the like. And that's completely true. These conservatives are completely on board with what was once radical leftist agenda, things like social security spending that's out the roof. They used to always talk about the fiscal cliff and stuff, and like we were talking about with Trump, I mean, people have just forgotten what it is to be conservative or what it is to have values or principles. People just want to attach to their red or blue mentality dichotomy and have something to hate and something to blame for everything.
I guess to conservatives, I'd say stop believing the lies that you're being fed and start taking action. You know,
Call these people out.
yeah,
Call these Republicans out. They
yeah.
all suck. Almost all of them,
Call
not all of them.
Republicans out. Call everybody out, man. People need to stop believing in these lies that they're being fed by the mainstream media and mainstream conservative and liberal commentators and everything because it's simply not the truth. It's not fact. It's not backed by literally anything other than emotion. Um, but stop believing the lies. Start taking action. I'm always loud on Twitter. I always make sure that just for my own sanity that I make sure that people understand that I don't believe any of this stuff and everything, and that and a lot of people like me for that. So I'm gonna keep speaking my mind until they ban me off these freaking platforms, dude. I've already flirted with a Twitter ban. I've already deactivated my Facebook and a couple other things. So they're gonna have to ban me off these platforms before I stop exposing them for what they are. I'm sick and tired of it.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much all we got for this week.
Yeah, dude.
There was a lot going on.
I'm
with,
super hungry.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with, like we said, the inauguration. Trump's out of office. He'll definitely be missed for his humor, if anything.
I mean, the Biden memes that have been coming out have been pretty solid so far, but I definitely don't think they're on par with the memes that we got out of the Trump presidency. So I hope the memes continue to improve and everything, and hopefully at least we'll be able to have something else to laugh about here pretty soon. But obviously, Biden's only been in office a couple days, so he's definitely got more in store probably in the next week. So I guess stay tuned on that. We'll see you guys next week. Y'all be easy.
All right, see you guys. Have a good one.